Yes, hello. Today, look, we are going to be discussing just particular teams and what equips you should be using for specific teams. I'm going to go a little bit into the nitty gritty, but not too much that I'm going to be suggesting alternate core. I will give you like certain ideas, and we're going to go through them specifically in this video for specific teams. So the teams that I'm going to cover for this episode will be movies, so sagas from the movies, androids, and the Tournament of Power team. So the Universal Survival representatives. That is going to be the three main teams that I'm covering for this video. If you would like other teams to be covered, just leave down in the comments below like what you would like to see me cover next, and I'll do that. Like I have boundless time, so I can do that right now. So without further ado, let's begin. So first up, we have sagas from the movies, and as a result, you have Janemba. And I'm not going to go really too far into why they're core. They're core because they're core. And if you need an explanation, well, you clearly haven't been playing PvP too much. But regardless. So for Janemba, the equips that you mainly want to look at are things like this. So you have the Awaken once again, you have returned, which mainly just buffs mainly strike. That's essentially what it does. It's one of those offshoot ones that you just pick because you can't think of anything better. But it can be relevant depending on your Z abilities. So it really comes down to team composition. So what you put on your bench. But otherwise, it's not a bad equip. It's definitely solid. You can use it. Awaken, hold on to my shoulder. This one's really good, particularly for the last slot alone. The ability to have an 18% pure boost in strike is extremely relevant, especially if you are Zenkai buffing Janemba. So this really just comes down to, are you Zenkai buffing Janemba? Are your Z abilities stacking enough that the strike is relevant? That sort of thing. So what I would do is if you are going to run something like this, then this first equip does make actually a lot of sense. If you aren't running this equip, then in that case, maybe you might want to not consider this equip at all. So let's move on to the third equip. Then we have Awaken, which is, it's okay. I would definitely say that this is more tailored towards a more utility / somewhat pseudo defensive Janemba. And I don't suggest that at all. Personally speaking, Janemba is an offensive output. I'm only putting this here for those that feel like being a little bit more gimmicky, but otherwise I wouldn't even recommend this. I just put it on the list for those that want to try something a little bit more, I don't know, weird. Then we have Awakened Incarnation of Evil. This one I do recommend, mainly because of the special move damage up. That alone is extremely relevant, plus the base strike that gets boosted twice, and a little bit of defense doesn't really make a difference. I mean, it does, but you know what I mean. It's not very relevant to why we pick this equip altogether. Then you have the Merciless Pursuit. This is for those that really don't want to work on a lot of other equips. But to be fair, this equip is solid. I'm not going to pretend like it isn't something that you could pick or that it wouldn't work. It would, particularly because of the ultimate damage. If you are going to pick this equip, then please go for a red slot 1 where you're as close to 10%, if not at 10%, because you really want your ultimate damage doing as much maximum output damage as possible. So just, consider that. And then we have the Awakened Super Regeneration No. 1. This one is hit or miss, and the reason why I say this is because of the last slot altogether. Right now, considering that movies is very relevant in the meta, this is a fine equip, but this equip will go down in value as soon as movies are not as relevant. So it's one of those equips where I don't personally want to put any emphasis on, and I'm only recommending this to those that really want to play into like countering the meta more so than anything else. So this could be also used if you're playing like a regen team and you have Janemba and you just want to deal damage to movies. This is perfectly acceptable. But once movies dips, or if you're up against a team that isn't movies, then you might find yourself in a awkward state with losing out on an entire slot just due to a anti-meta pick. All right, let's move on to the next equip, which is the Piccolo. It's just a very solid base equip. You get base health, you get base blast, base strike, but you also get pure buffs too. So like Realistically, you can't go wrong with this, and considering the fact that this is a movies team, you're going to be running this with a regeneration member, which Janemba himself is that, so he actually counts towards that condition, which means you only need the red Gohan, and boom, you're done. And you finished. You've got all the criteria necessary. So it's just like one of those things where, realistically, this is probably one of the most major equips you could run on this unit, and honestly, probably even better than this one, if I had to be quite frank, just because I do prefer the overall strike and blast increase with the health, and the defense doesn't really make a difference because realistically, Janemba isn't a tanky unit, even when you build him up. So if he's going to die, he's going to die. So you might as well maximize his offensive output since that's what he's built for. So next up, we have Ultimate Gohan, who transforms into Le Beast. He is really, really, really ridiculous and brain dead, but whatever. Let's just go on and move on to the equips. So we have Awaken, Let's Go. We mainly use this for the special move damage. The base strike is also good, so we really want to maximize the slot 1. This equip, as a result, isn't exactly the most fun to farm because you want to maximize these first two. And because you can't re-roll those slots, you have to keep on recreating the equip over and over and over again. And then this last slot isn't exactly very relevant, but it can be at times, like especially when you're a last man stand and you need to keep on winning the neutral game, that could be relevant. But otherwise, this doesn't really get to see much play until you're in those positions or you're in a 1v1. Those could be relevant. But otherwise, it's not a very relevant stat condition, so take it as you will. I mean, if you're not interested in this equip, that's perfectly fine, but this is definitely a solid equip for this beast. Then you have, again, the same one for movies. Realistically, you're just doing this because you want to increase damage output, and that's pretty much it. Everything else is just an add-on. That last slot is the only thing that is of major importance. Then you call that a punch. Now, because of how these equips are written, people sometimes write these off, but essentially what is happening here is that what they mean is if your entire team is composed of sagas from the movies, you will have these. So even if one of your units get downed, this is still active. So don't worry about that. The writing of it is completely off. Obviously, this is a much more defensive equip. So as a result, it's one of those things that I only suggest for those that really cannot be bothered to do equips to the maximum degree. If you are one of those people that wants to have an interim equip while you're working on another equip, this is a fine equip. But I would definitely replace this as you keep on working on your Gohan. It's just one of those things that I personally don't see very, very relevant for him. Then we have this one. This one's just a staple, just in general, because of how it's built. It's really built for offense, and that offense really works well with this Gohan. He's basically like 17, like top 17. He, like the Legends Limited, he essentially does that, plus is an offensive powerhouse. So you really want to take advantage of that. And with that being said, that's why you would run this. You, of course, don't have to run this. If you choose not to run this, just make sure you're maximizing his special. Then you have the Awaken No 1. This is a very controversial one, and the reason for it is because you would only run this in the situation that 2 or more of your characters on your movies team are hybrids. If at least 2 of them are hybrids, this is a perfectly fantastic equip to run. If you're running only Beast, 1 hybrid on your movies team, do not run this equip. I mean, I think it goes without saying, but 8% is not enough. If you want 16%, that's fine. That is more than fair. You can actually get away with that. Because, I mean, realistically, one of the other equips is only 18%, which is only a 2% increase. I mean, it doesn't make that big of a difference. I mean, yes, every percentage does count, so realistically, if you have better options, don't use this. But, like I said, if you are running 2 hybrids on your team, this is a perfectly fine equip to run, and could definitely edge out a lot of fights. Then we have Awaken. Once again, you have returned, no 1, just solid base strike attacks, some defense. Helps with the base, so that way once you start using pure equips, it multiplies. And then we have an old-fashioned superhero. We're mainly using this one just because of the special move. Not to say that the base strike and these don't matter. They do. They're really solid. It's just that that special move is really relevant, even at 10%. So it's a fine equip. And since it's this new one, they tend to be usually made better than a lot of the older ones. That's not always true. But this is one of those few instances where I would actually say, yeah, this is actually a solid equip, even for a new character like Beast. So moving on, then we have Power Awakening Piccolo. He is the final unit on the core. You could argue that the yellow Gotenks could also be core, and if you want to do that, you can, but I will not be covering his equips, so just letting you know, or the unit himself. So just, you're warned right now. The first one is a staple. There is no, you're not running this, you are running this. It's the Piccolo's Awakening equip. You will want to maximize this as much as possible, and you'll want slot 3 for his final effect on slot 3. So this is, I don't even have to explain this. If you're not running this equip, you're just neutering your Piccolo, just straight up. This is the other one that I would honestly say you should run, just because it is a very offensive and defensive equip, just straight up. So there's really no reason not to run this, since you're essentially just stacking this on top of his other important equips. So I would definitely say that these two are staples. Your third equip, however, can be, a mix. You could decide you could run this if you want to increase his special move damage, since it's 12.5%. That could be very relevant, since he only runs blue cards and he has no ult. So as a result, his blue card is his main source of damage. And since this also buffs strike, you are essentially buffing strike and blue. Those are his two main selling points. And because his most important equip does pure damage, just for first and foremost, you're just adding extra layers with adding base. Another one you could run is this. I don't recommend it personally, just because you have already a pure strike, you have the pure, you have everything else. It's not very relevant, this one. You can if you want to, but I don't see a point. And then finally you have this if you just want to purely buff the base, so that way those pure buffs do a lot more for that strike. However, you are losing a little bit on the blue card, so that could actually hurt you in the long run. So it really just depends on how you're building Orange Piccolo, but realistically, I prefer, like, if I were to tell you what I run this one, and this one. These are the three I run. That's not to say that this is the absolute best variation, but it's definitely up there. All right, and then obviously you could run this if you want to. This is also a fine one if you don't really want to work on, I think it's this one. If you don't want to work on this one, you could run this one, an old-fashioned superhero. It does similar things, if not better in some capacity. So realistically, this is fine too. I just like to have the double strike, which this is obviously a singular strike, so it is less percentage, and I do have a better special than this one. However, this one does get a little bit more defenses. However, I do think his defenses are fine as they are with what I've set up, so I don't really feel like I'm losing out on much with this one, but this is a good one if you really don't want to be bothered with too many awakenings. All right, now let's move on to androids. Now with androids, we have obviously Perfect Form Cell, the new one, so not the old one. So just be careful, because there are two purple Legends Limited Perfect Cells, so just be warned. All right, so let's look at some of the ones. This one's is generally a staple. The Awakened I'm Counting on You, it just does base for everything. So you're just essentially covering all your ground, all stats, essentially. Just I don't know what else to say. It's a solid equip. It is an older Awakened equip, but it's still solid to this day. Then you have this. This is a staple as well, generally because you get your Restoration, special move increase, you get Base Blast, you get Pure Blast, Base Strike, Pure Strike. And again, this is a mistranslation. What they're trying to say is as long as you have 3 on the team, whether downed or not, that were active at the beginning of the battle, this is enabled. Then you have this one. This is for more like the type of people that want to really build off of his special and keep him alive for a little bit longer. But mainly it's for his special, so that way they can deal extra damage Otherwise, it's an okay equip. I'm not saying it's a bad equip. It's just one of those ones where you really have to tailor how you're playing with your cell. And I think that's going to really make a difference on how you want to run him. If you want to be more nuke oriented or combo oriented. Then you have this. This is just your base. It's just like your Jiren like equip. It's the same thing, just mainly boosts blast. It's there to just help you out with your blast stat, and that's about it, since he is a blast blast-based character. Then you have Awaken Behold My Perfect Divinity, and this one, again, it is kind of like it covers a lot of bases, increases special move damage, but it is weaker in the sense that it does, as a result, decrease where it overall what it boosts. But it's pretty good for overall. So if you want to run this, it's perfectly acceptable. All right, moving on to Gamma 1 and Gamma 2, because these two are they're a menace and they are best on androids. So first up, we have the Awaken 10 times Kamehameha. This is an okay one. It depends on how you're building your Gammas. I think that's really relevant to when you would run this. You can run this. It is not a bad equip to run. It's fine if, let's say, you're really trying to not have to put too many resources into equips. Then in that case, this is fine. But otherwise, depending on how you build this might not be an option for you. This one, however, probably would be an option just for the general stats. It gives you a good base to work off of. However, the fact that it mainly boosts strike may be offsetting, so you might actually want to consider just going for this one instead. It really just depends. This one, Gamma 1 and 2 is a very finicky one where you can kind of play around with the equips on androids. So just letting you know. This one, however, is just generally speaking a great one. This is probably the best equip that androids have, and rightfully so. It just covers all your bases in terms of damage, and in terms of health restoration, which they do an amazing job at, which is why they tend to not die ever, and they feel unkillable. Then we have Awaken This Should Be Fun. This is probably your other one that you want to run, just because giving yourself that defensive boost is really helpful, especially when you're adding health and you're also adding health restoration. You're essentially making yourself unkillable and making your opponent's life absolutely miserable, which is essentially the idea. So yeah, as a result, because there's not as many equips to choose from, you definitely, especially for this unit, you could definitely find yourself feeling like there's not many options, as I didn't pick too many because there didn't feel like there was as many options for this unit. I'm sure you could technically run some other Awakened or just regular plats or regular golds, but I do feel like these are probably some of the better ones that he can run, especially since this is your main source of damage, this unit themselves. So just consider that. All right, let's move on to 17. He's your support character. This one has a lot more options. At least I think it does, or maybe it was the top variation of him. He had more options. But let's go over it. So obviously you have this one. This one's a staple for 17. You want him to live, because him not living can cause you to essentially downright lose the game. Him or Gamma 1 and 2 dying out could be detrimental. Not to say that it is impossible to come back. I'm not trying to insinuate any of that sort. It's just that you really want to keep this guy alive. That's essentially what I'm trying to say. So this equip, as a result, is an insta pick. Again, another solid equip. Like I said, older equip, still solid. Just a shame that it's focused on strike. Again, the best equip, I argue, on the team. You run them on all three. There's really no reason not to. This is one that you could run on him because this is specific to the universal reps. And this covers base blast, base blast, base blast, base health, special move, and base key recovery. Essentially, all of the things you would want 17 to do while you're waiting to bring in on any of your other units. So this is just a great equip. It's also great if he's a last man stand. So this could be one of those situations where I would honestly recommend this equip overall. If you're going to add a third equip, this should be it. But that's just my personal opinion. All right, moving on to Universal Survival Saga. We have Evoken. I call them Evoken. The Reddit calls them Evoken. I mean, people will call them what they want, so it doesn't really matter. But I'm going to call them Evoken for the purpose of this video. So first up, we have Awakened, but anyone who tries to hurt my friends is going to pay. I don't personally like this equip. I've seen a lot of Japanese players liking this equip. I did put it because I don't think it's objectively bad. I don't think so at all. I think it is objectively good. I just don't personally like running this equip. I feel like there are better variations. However, their meta and the North America meta is vastly different, so that does play a factor in what equips you would pick. So just keep that in mind. Depending on how you play and which region you're from, this equip could be really good. So I just don't find it as beneficial in the North American scene. That's all. But otherwise, this equip is solid. There's nothing objectively wrong with it. This is basically the Android version. Every single tag has basically, or almost every single tag. I can't be 100% certain on this one, but everyone has their own version. Again, another just misexplained thing, but essentially does the same thing. So just really solid equip. Then you have this new equip. It's similar to the movie's equip, the new one, but I don't like this one. It feels worse than the movie's variation, which I think is hilarious. So I personally wouldn't run this, but I can definitely see why you would run it. It is not a bad equip. I just think it's not as good as some of the other options that you have. Then you have this one. This one's really good. I don't have to explain it. I've explained it before. You could also run, when we get to the sub for this team, because I did put 4 characters since there is a sub that you could run. Then I'll go over the last equip, and you can see what you could also throw on to all of your teams if you choose to do so. But because this is a blast-oriented, Universal Survival Saga type team, I have hesitations for this. All right, we got the Goku in Final Form Frieza. They are strike-based, so this is the odd one. Like, you can put them as a sub. You could also put the 4th unit on that I put on as a sub. So I think it really just comes down to, are you trying to make this pure blast, or are you trying to have some variation? Like, what utility are you looking for? I think is what it really comes down to. But anyways, let's cover this one. So this is a good equip for them, depending on what you're running in tandem and what your bench is. So if your bench isn't really Zenkai buffing them too much, if the strike stat is not being buffed too much, or you're trying to be more well-rounded, this might not be the equip for you, but otherwise this is actually a solid equip if you're looking for hard-hitting and less combo orientation. This is obviously the really good one, so you just kind of run it on the basis that it's really good. This is really good for special move and strike, but this is obviously for a more strike-oriented unit, so again, it really just depends. On this type of team, this is probably not a great equip, but I'm just giving you the option. This is basically the exact same equip, just with a different art. Actually, no, it is the exact same equip with that, but just with a different art. Yeah, it's the exact same equip with a different art. Amazing. You could run this if you're looking for pure strike, but again, this is why I call Goku Frieza kind of a sub on their own team, just because Evoken is much more blast-oriented. You really want to focus on that blast. The reason for it is you're running Android 17. Now, on this team, he's running, obviously, you can run this. You don't have to. It is just an option. You're obviously running this one. You can run this, but I don't recommend it. You can run this, but I don't really see it too often in NA. You probably will run this. This is a really solid one. This one can be okay if you're running on the blast side. And this one is also solid if you're really trying to buff up that blast. I believe that is all of his equips. And then we move on to the 4th character, or alternatively, the 3rd character. It just depends on who you're running. You're either running Goku Frieza or Full Power Jiren. I think that's really the way to go. If you really want to make it pure blast, then I would run Jiren over Goku Frieza. And as long as, you're using this character effectively with his Zenkai, he is a formidable beast. This guy is virtually unkillable without an RR or without multiple combos on him. I found that he is extremely tanky, especially if he's well built. So that's just something to consider. So obviously, this is a really good equip for him. This one is actually really solid as well. And you could definitely run it. My only thing about this is if you're going to run something like this, you have to really consider, are you mainly using it because of the defense? Right? Because unfortunately, and the strike isn't very, very relevant. That special move, however, is relevant. So that's something to consider. But definitely top teams have become much more blast-based, so yearning for strength isn't as solid as it once was. And that just goes to show that Goku Frieza is falling off. Not to say that they're not used. They're still definitely used. But they're falling off on a top team, and they're really being replaced by Jiren simply because he meshes better with the new Evoken N17. I think that's really what it comes down to. But, you may disagree, you may agree. It's up to you on if you want to feel that way or not. I can't control how you feel about that. This one's a staple. You auto run this. It is Jiren's specific awakened awakening equip. You have to run it to make him the monster he's supposed to be. It's kind of like that Piccolo equip. If you're not running this, you're neutering him. So it's not up for debate. You are running this equip. And you are red slotting slot 3 and slot 1. You could run this equip alongside it. Solid equip, solid overall stats. Just you make him less tanky if you choose this more well-rounded option. Then you have this if you just want to go for extra blast. This is perfectly fine if you're really trying to nuke them with a blast attack. This is also fine, but again, it just depends on how you're playing. That health here could come into handy and into considerations. That's something to consider. We have the Let's Go. I don't recommend this for him at all, but you can. It's not something you can't do. It's just I don't recommend it. Once again, it just really comes down to how lazy you are. And then finally, Awaken, try all you want. You cannot defeat me. This one's really good, actually. I think this one's a really solid one because you already have so much buffing that you're doing. If you just throw it onto defense and buff his only a special move and ultimate damage, you're essentially doing everything he wants to do, personally speaking. Because realistically, this guy is supposed to be a wall. His blue card is supposed to be a nuke. And his ultimate card does AoE damage. So for those of you that sometimes forget this, his ultimate is an AoE damage dealing card. So the more ultimate damage you have onto it, the more damage you're doing to the main unit. The more damage you're doing to the main unit, the more is subsequently subtracted from the opposing standby units. So just something to consider. But with that being said, that's all that I want to cover for this video. If you guys have other teams you want me to cover, please let me know down in the comments below, and I'll get to them as soon as I can. With that being said, have yourselves a salty day, and I'll see you in the next video.
Sir Pee Pee, Sir Pee Pee.